today we'll be having Mr. Wilson. And just a very brief profile. Mr. Wilson is a senior economist at the National Economic Summit Group, NESG. His areas of interest and expertise include macroeconomic research, industry research, structural transformation, and poverty studies. His latest piece of Nigeria Quest for Economic Inclusion was published in February 2023 by the Brookings Institution, a globally recognized think tank. Wilson delivers economic presentations to investors. You can hear that. Somebody that delivers presentations to investors is here to speak with us. It's such a great privilege. He speaks to other stakeholders, including Settlements Nigeria, PAC Holdings, Premium Pensions, PSDH Holdings, PAL Pensions, South Africa Nigeria Business Chamber. In 2022, Wilson delivered a presentation on the Nigeria economy to high-level stakeholders at Jesus College, Cambridge University, and subsequently at the Queen Elizabeth Center. In 2023, Wilson was invited to speak at the Chatham House Africa Forum in London on public debt management in Africa. Wilson expresses his views on the Nigeria economy on various television platforms such as the BBC, Al Jazeera, Channels TV, Arise TV, and CNBC Africa. So I want each and every one of us after this Confab series to just go check Mr. Wilson out on Instagram. You just see some highlights of the things he has been into. You would not see everything, but you see some highlights, and you can see where to go watch more on the things on the wisdom that Mr. Wilson has been dropping regarding Nigeria economy and how to rise amidst the inflation going on. Wilson is a senior research fellow at the Faith Institute, Lagos, Nigeria, where he makes significant contributions to the preparation of the highly referenced annual State of Entrepreneurship report in Nigeria. He is a member of the Royal Economic System London and is a part of the expert network at Trent Research and Advisory based in the United Arab Emirates. He has a master's degree in economics from the University of Lagos, Nigeria, and is currently a guest lecturer at the School of Oriental and Africa Studies, that is SOAS, University of London, where he is completing his PhD studies. He teaches economic development of Africa at SOAS. So, like I said once again, before you heard a brief introduction about Mr. Wilson, we give him a round of applause. Can we just give Mr. Wilson a round of applause before he comes to bless us with so much knowledge that would need in a time like this in Nigeria? Please, let's just put our hands together for Mr. Wilson. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation to join us on Confab series. We are so excited to have you here. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
You can hear me? I don't know if you can see.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can.
Sorry, Abigail, when you were reading all those things, at some point I wasn't sure you were talking about me. Yeah. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today. And in fact, I've always been part of the Confab from the start. I remember back then in Unity District, how this all started, how, in fact, Pastor Koyejo would say that he used to remind me that I wrote the first, is it the
working document?
Yeah, the working document for the Confab, for the first one. So it's been an interesting journey just to know that it's still going. You said this is Confab 13, right? It's just amazing, from where we started up to now. So it's always a pleasure for me to come back and but I see it as a giving back session, for me, just to continue the tradition to help people, youth as much as I can. So thank you, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm not sure if the format is more like a question and answer session, or if you just want me to go ahead and talk, because I talk a lot, so I can talk for 1 hour if you don't, or maybe you can just give me a time frame, or I don't know, however you want it to run, it's fine. Yeah.
All right. All right. You can just go on the conversation. We have about 45 minutes here. Then we can have question and answers.
Okay, that's fine. So the topic is, building wealth in an inflation, in an economy where you have high inflation. And I'm sure, like you all know, what's happening within Nigeria, growth, as economists. So I will try to limit the numbers I use, just to make it a lot more relatable. What we've had over the years is that if you look at Nigerian economy, you would see that growth has been slowing. By growth, I mean economic growth, GDP growth, which is basically just trying to tell you that it measures what you produce within the economy at a particular time, maybe within a year. So you would see that GDP growth has slowed significantly. If you remember, we're coming from a period of COVID-19 where the economy was shut down for a while, and people couldn't trade, do business as much as they could. We had problems with oil production and so many other factors that led to exchange rate depreciation. And the naira is something we always you hear every day, like it keeps losing its value. So that's where we're coming from. And then even as we're recovering from COVID in 2021, right? What then happened was, the war in Ukraine, and how that, impacted, in fact, so many countries, not just Nigeria, so many countries. And what that war did was, it led to a very huge shortage of some key commodities that were produced or that are being produced in Ukraine and Russia. One of that commodity is wheat, and grains in general. So Ukraine and Russia are some of the largest world's producers of some of these commodities, but because of the war, they couldn't produce as much and export to other countries. So you had cases where prices were just going up. In some countries that relied on Russia for gas and energy, they also were dealing with an inflation problem, like the UK, the US, and co. Mostly Europe, though. So they had to, because they import gas from Russia, but because of the war and sanctions on Russia, they just couldn't as much as they can. So countries that rely on these commodities like wheat, fertilizer, grains, and so many other commodities from these countries, they experience shortage. And of course, if you know demand and supply, anytime there's a shortage, prices will tend to go up. And that's basically what we're experiencing also in Nigeria. The fact that Nigeria imports a lot of wheat. Wheat is used for so many things. Bread, wheat flour can be used for so many things. So that's problem one. The other angle is also, looking at crude oil price and the fact that subsidies were, taking a lot from the government's, purse. And what that also means is that as oil price was increasing, Nigeria was not even gaining from that, again, because its oil was being stolen, or crude oil was being stolen by who? I don't know. But I think that's a common trend that we all know what's going on within Nigeria. We know somehow some people's hand would be involved. But that's going to politics and all that. But the key message is that oil output, the oil we produce, was reducing significantly. In fact, it got to the point where Nigeria was producing just about 1.1 million barrels of oil per day. This is a country that 10 years ago were producing 2.1 million barrels per day. In fact, at some point, it was 2.2 million barrels per day. But the record show we're doing 1.1, as at just sometime last year. So you can imagine going from 2.1 to 1.1. It means a lot of monies have been lost. Nigeria was losing significant foreign currency. So there was just no dollar, no FX. FX means foreign exchange. No dollar to meet import demand. So all of the things we were importing, we just can't pay for them. And that's why you see that, exchange rates, the exchange rate naira would lose its value and exchange rate starts to fall. By fall, I mean weaken, where you have maybe 1,000 naira to a dollar, it goes to 1,500, it goes to 2,000, and all that. So that's what we mean by when the naira is losing its value. So it becomes more expensive to import things. So that's basically a summary of where we were, where we are coming from. The fact that growth is slow on the first leg, oil is being stolen. On the second leg, there is this war in Ukraine that led to scarcity of certain commodities, and of course, if there's scarcity, higher prices would happen. All of these were happening on the back of the fact that the borders were shut in Nigeria, so people couldn't trade as much as they could, officially, even though we know, the borders were open that night, but officially borders were shut. It was difficult for people to trade, during the day, and all of that. So all of this led to the fact that we now live in an inflation environment. And of course, when this new administration came on board, two major reforms they did was first to remove subsidy, because the argument was that it's putting a pressure on government finances. Government was spending, trillions, I think about 3.54 trillion per year just to subsidize petrol. The other was also on foreign exchange. We had a huge gap. If you wanted to import something, you had to join a very long queue. Sometimes it takes months. If you school abroad, you wanted to pay school fees, it just takes forever for you. Sometimes you just never get it. And part of it was because a lot of rationing was going on. People were sorting themselves out. If you know someone in the bank and all of that. So it was difficult to get the FX, and the FX was also being held. The rate was being held, at I think about 450 as at then. It was just stable there. But then we saw that parallel market rate was just, it kept going up and up and up. And so the government that came in, this new government, just decided to remove subsidies. And then the second thing was to implement what we call an FX reforms, where it just liberalized, almost I'd say liberalized the FX market, or just allowed demand and supply to determine the exchange rate. And that's where we are. Dollar is somewhere around 1,500 naira as at now. And then petrol prices went up immediately from 168 naira at some point to 500 and something, almost 600 naira. And so the impact of these two reforms, have been huge on the economy. And this is where I'm going to on inflation. We've seen, where prices just kept going up and up and up, because part of the problem is Nigeria imports a lot of things. We import things that we can even produce locally, things that we even have in Nigeria. It's almost like it's like you grow corn in your backyard and then you go ahead to import corn. Why don't you just think of growing it, on a larger scale and sell in the market? And that's also one of the opportunities that, I will discuss a bit more, as to some of the things that we import are things that we have the natural, we are endowed in producing those things. We have no business importing those things, and so that's basically one of the things I'll be talking about. And I remember releasing something recently on what we as a country import, how we spend, a lot of money importing things like vegetable products. You can imagine Nigeria imports vegetable and you're wondering, what are we doing with that? What kind of vegetable are we importing? We spent about 1.6 trillion naira just importing vegetable for 2023 last year. So these are that's basically the reality of things. And so with a weaker currency, when you rely on imports, it means certainly all that cost will be passed on to the consumers, and that's where we are. For fuel, it's no news that fuel is being used by for so many things in Nigeria: transport, to power industries, even to power your homes. As far as electricity is concerned, used for diesel is used by industries and all of that. So when that reform subsidy was removed, businesses had to pay so much to produce, to buy fuel. Fuel price went up significantly, and because of that, we saw they would obviously transfer much of the cost to the citizens, and that's where inflation comes in. So you can see from two main channels. One is the foreign exchange reforms, the fact that the CBN decided to allow the currency to get to 1,500 naira in a way so that it will discourage import. But if you don't produce locally, you have to import. That's one thing. The other channel is through the subsidy removal. There were also other issues like insecurity, which is making people not go to the farms to produce agricultural commodities. That's also one problem. Issues relating to power supply, infrastructure, and all of this. So when you put, all of these factors together, you would see that, inflation just had to go up, prices just had to go up, and then I always say this, that inflation is the enemy of the poor and the middle class. They are the ones that will suffer the most from, high inflation. Because if you think of it, I'm not sure how much income has grown over time, especially from an individual level. How much has your salary or the money you make from your business, has it been able to grow, faster than even inflation? Most of the time, you often find that the answer is no. And so when prices keep going up, in some cases, even when you have, an increase in your salary, the question also is it increasing to catch up with the increase in price? So there's something we call in economics money illusion, that you think you are gaining because, oh, your boss just increased your salary. But when you compare that with prices, what's have you seen any is it growing faster than prices? And so that's one key thing to look out for. So inflation is a very important concept in economics, and it affects the lives of everyone. And so for Nigeria, what you find is that, so for inflation, there are two main types of inflation. There is food inflation, and then there's non-food inflation. Non-food inflation covers things like transport, healthcare, um, school fees, and many other things that are not related to food. Whilst food inflation looks at your what you spend on food, the food prices of main commodities. We're talking about bread, we're talking about yam, maize, and fruit, and so many other food related commodities. For Nigeria, so you'd find that food inflation is the highest, while non-food inflation is the lowest. So you can see obviously where the problem then is: agriculture. So currently inflation as at the last figure was 31.7%. And then I think food inflation is somewhere around 37%. And then non-food inflation is, at maybe 27 or 26 to 27%. So you can see the pressure is on the prices of food, food and related commodities. And that would then lead me to the next part of the conversation. Now that we are living in a very high inflation environment, what do we need to do? And what are the areas of opportunities? And I've mentioned one of them, and one of them is agriculture. And if you are operating within that space, right, the opportunities are just endless. But again, there are challenges with insecurity, especially when you start going to the core far north. And I even hear that even some places in in the south, are not, left out of this problem. But the key message is that as much as we're seeing hike in food prices, and to be honest, anytime you see inflation coming down, or because there are forecasts, so many forecasts that are saying inflation rates will start dropping in in the second part of this year, the second half of this year. In fact, some people said from April, May, we'll start seeing inflation rates drop. When inflation rate drops, it doesn't mean that prices should drop. And I think that's one thing that people often confuse. When inflation rate, for instance, is 31.7% as at February 2024, if it drops to 25%, it doesn't mean that food prices has dropped. It just means that the pace at which prices is increasing is what has fallen. So I don't know how else to explain this. So it just means that prices. So what a 31.7% inflation means is that on average, prices increased by 31.7%. Now, if inflation drops to 25%, it means that prices increased by 25%. If it drops to 20%, it means that prices increased by 20%. So it means that is the pace at which prices are increasing that is dropping, not that prices are dropping. The only way price will drop is when inflation is below zero, and then you start talking about deflation. Or when inflation, if it's zero, it means prices have not increased. So be aware of the news, because I'm sure later part of the year you start hearing things like inflation rate is dropping, and then of course the government would want to tell you that, they'll make you feel like your life is now better. No, as far as there's inflation, prices are going up. And so one of the key areas that I will talk about is agriculture, and the fact that the kind of things that Nigeria imports, just tells you how ridiculous, and how serious we need to take certain things in the economy. And I say this because I also know people who work within the agricultural space and how they're able to squeeze through, despite all of the challenges that they face. So you would see things like, when you look at what Nigeria imports, you would see things like food and live animals. Nigeria spends about 3.5 trillion importing food and live animals. That's almost 10% of our total import is spent on importing food. Like I mentioned earlier, vegetable products. Nigeria spends 1.6 trillion naira importing vegetable products. Even things like manufactured goods items, that people use on a daily basis. Nigeria spends a lot of money importing all of these items. And so it would be nice for entrepreneurs and people who are seeking for opportunities what can you contribute in this area? How can you be part of the solution? How can you, for instance, take advantage of all of these things that we import and start producing? How can you join communities within the agricultural space, where you can learn one or two things? You don't have to start now, because these problems, are not going anywhere anytime soon, right? So you don't have to start now. I mean, gather materials, learn resources, look at the things that the country imports, especially those that can be produced easily, and start from somewhere. You know, is my network not? Is my network bad, or can't you hear me? I just saw a message that.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So it's basically starting from somewhere, starting small, because food is so central to any community or any country. It's central, and it's a thing that demand will always increase, especially for a country like Nigeria, where population is growing at somewhere around 3% every year. If you look at the stats, you would see that from now till 2050, Nigeria would have about 423 million people. From the current maybe 220 million people. So we will add an extra 200 million people to this population, and that's really huge. That population would need to eat, they'll need housing, they'll need education, they'll need healthcare, they will need so many things. Nigeria would likely become the third most populous country in the world, by then. And that's such a huge number. So many of the developed or advanced economies are experiencing very slow growth in population, and that's also one area I'll talk about, earlier, and the opportunities that come with that. And so, food will remain essential, as the country expands in terms of population over the years, and so that's one key area that I think people can explore. The other area is in terms of investments, and I'll still come back to food, agriculture, and especially as it relates to foreign exchange, and I think that's one big area to explore. But let me digress a bit and talk about investments. And so, if I were speaking to a group of investors, people who run, funds, like say you're dealing with 100 million, 200 million, a billion, I wouldn't, of course, wouldn't start with food. I would have started with this point I'm about to make, and the fact that interest rates are already rising. So if you follow the news, you would see that as at the end of February, the Central Bank of Nigeria held a meeting, and it's called the Monetary Policy Committee meeting. These are the people that get to decide interest rates in the country. And so they met and they rose interest rates. So interest rate rose from 18.75% to 22.75%. And what you then find is that all other rates on treasury bills, rates on commercial papers, rates on federal government bonds have responded, and they're all going up. So part of the reason why they did that is because the argument is that inflation in Nigeria, there's also an element of money supply that is driving inflation. And I'll explain a bit more. What the committee looked at, they said, there's been so much money in circulation in the country. Money supply has been growing. And of course, when people have so much money, they tend to spend to buy things. And when producers or sellers, when they know you have money, they tend to increase price because they know you will buy anyways. And so they are trying to then reduce the amount of money supply in the system. And one way to do that is to increase interest rates. Okay, I don't know if that message is for me, but let me explain again. So the Central Bank of Nigeria has a committee called the Monetary Policy Committee. Now, one of the things they do is set interest rates for the country. And before they met in February, interest rate was 18.75%. And when they met, one of the things they said is driving inflation. In addition to all of the factors I mentioned earlier, foreign exchange, subsidy removal, insecurity, infrastructure, and many of those things, the border closure. In addition to that, they said one of the things driving inflation is too much money in the system. People have a lot of money going around, flowing around the system. And of course, one of the things they want to do is to reduce that money that is going around. And one way to do that is to raise interest rates to reduce money supply. And so they decided to raise interest rates from 18.75% to 22.75%. And immediately they did that. Of course, when interest rates go up, even if you want to get a loan from the bank, you would be like, you don't need to get a loan. So what that has done to you is that you've already reduced or potentially reduced money supply growth. It means that you are deciding not to borrow money from the bank because interest rates are high and you will need to pay more when you need to pay back. So what you've automatically done is to potentially reduce the potential growth of money supply in a way, and then of course maybe reduce inflation by extension. And so with that, what we've seen is that so many other interest rates have responded, like interest rate on treasury bills, interest rate on commercial papers. um, Commercial papers means if a company wants to raise money, they go to the market to issue commercial paper and say, I want to raise 100 million naira. Take this paper, and they'll give you the paper. You buy it, basically. You give them the money. And then at the end of the period, maybe if the paper is for 6 months, they'll pay you back your money with interest. So the interest rate has also gone up because the Monetary Policy Committee benchmark rate was increased. So if you have a lot of money and you are not a risk, if you don't like risk, if you are risk averse, there's a huge opportunity for you to invest in government treasury bills and buying commercial papers and investing in government bonds, federal government bonds, because you would get very high interest rates, not close to inflation, but something around 25%, 24% interest. So you can imagine that's how the rich gets richer. You imagine having 100 million, for instance, and then you just purchase treasury bills. It's just like you give the government for 1 year, and then you get an interest of 25 million. That's 25%. So by the end of the year, you have 125 million naira. Imagine doing that for the next 5-10 years. You automatically will be approaching 1 billion naira just by doing nothing. So that's and there's so many people I know that just they live on interest on their investments because they've been able to grow their capital over time. I have a boss that would tell me all you need to do is just save your money and invest your money. When you get up to 200 million, 300 million, just keep getting interest on that. Imagine 300 million and 10% of that, that's 30 million in a year. And he sees that as his pension, so living on interest from your investment and your capital remains intact. So you can imagine just doing that within the Nigerian economy, and buying treasury bills is one of the most secure investments you can ever have because it's on the faith of the Nigerian government itself. So it's government that issues this. I've been part of it. I've done it to the point that, in fact, I use the money to do so many things. I own a house in Lagos. Do so many. So, and much of it was through my the yields, the interest I was getting on the investment. Because I started this a very long time. I started investing in treasury bills, since over 10 years ago, and I made sure that I kept faith and continued with it, over time. And so it's just something that, because you will not get any high interest rate elsewhere. I currently live in London. Interest rate here is like 5% or 4%, one of the lowest, ridiculously low. But in Nigeria, you're talking about interest rate of 23, 24, 25%, so that's really huge and something that if you start early, it would help you. For me, I've always had that investment mindset. In fact, I remember starting with fixed deposit, and at some point it was just ridiculous because I'll be getting interest rate that just didn't make sense. So I'll walk into a bank at UBA and co and tell them, oh, I want to fix this money. Part of it was because I don't want access to the money. So I wasn't really interested about the interest. I just say, okay. And I would do as little as 300K, 400K back then, just so I don't have access to it. So for me, it was a form of savings, but I was still getting some interest from it. And continued that until I was able to grow and grow and grow. And of course, when I get my salaries, I kept adding. And then I moved up to a point where I could get treasury bills. Continued with treasury bills. Interest rates were about 17% then. So I was gaining And I'm not the typical buying and selling business person that I want to buy this and sell this. I'm not a trader, so I don't have that interest to do that. But I said, let me play to my strengths. Since I understand the financial market, let me play to that. And that's basically what I did up until the point I was able to grow into, you know, grow your finance into millions, and then you just keep going and going and going, and up to the point where, and the higher you go, the higher the interest you get. So imagine interest rate was say 10%. 10% of 1 million is 100,000, but 10% of 100 million is 10 million. 10% of a billion is 100 million. So the higher you go, the more the interest, even if the rate remains the same, or even if it increases, yeah, it's still good. But the higher your principal, the higher the interest you would get from it. So there's so many people in that Lagos, Abuja, Enugu, that they don't need to work the rest of their lives. All they need to do is to live on interest from their investment. Yeah, and so the problem or the key thing is, how do you grow that principal to the point where it's significantly high enough for you to yield an interest on that. But that's I guess a conversation that we can have some other time. It will come from either your work salary, keep saving. You can do business. You can. For me, for instance, I was working, full time, but at the same time, I knew I wasn't skilled at trading and buying and selling. But what I'm very skilled at is writing. I'm a very good researcher. I write, and I do presentations. I know how to prepare presentations and write. And I, within my network, started doing some of these projects for people. Somebody will call me and say, "Oh, I'm presenting to the board. Can you help me write this paper?" And then, "Oh yes, I'll do it." And you get some money. That's how I was able to grow my, income. So it was not just relying on salary. It's about, doing other things that can get you income. And the next point that I will talk about, which is also linked to that, is the fact that you must look for ways to invest in yourself. And that's, I know you've heard about this a lot, but to be honest, it's something that you cannot afford not to do. Like you just have to do it. Get new skills. The world is moving, fast, and the world is changing rapidly. I think some people underestimate the impact of COVID, especially we as economists. COVID did something that, yes, sadly, we lost a lot of people as a result of the pandemic, but it did something that the world would never have achieved in a decade. COVID made us achieve it in just a short time, and that's digital acceleration, technology advancement. The pace at which COVID, enabled us to accelerate in terms of technology growth and, adoption was so massive that it would have taken us maybe by 2020, 2030 or so. That's when we would have, achieved that. But because of COVID, we achieved it in a very short time. So you don't want to be the one that will be left behind. I'm even as conservative as I can be, I learn and know how to use some basic tools, chat GPT, AI tech, and so many of those things, as basic as I can learn them, and you don't want to be the one that will leave behind. So I think I would emphasize that you should get new skills that are related to technology, because these skills are in huge demand across the world, not just in Nigeria, across the world. And it would make you stand out easily. So you would see that skills are like tech and co. In some countries, they would even give you visa for you to come in if you have certain type of skills, that they have prioritized, and they've seen that these areas we don't have too many people. We need people from abroad that have these skills. Things like technology, AI, machine learning, coding, and many of those things, especially how technology relates to human lives. Those skills are very, very important. And so you need to search areas that will, be relevant in the world in the next 5 to 10 years, and build towards having skills in those areas. And I've listed some here, IT, business analytics, AI, machine learning, complex problem solving skills, social influence, and all of these social media usage. Those things are very, very important, and they will make you stand out. And there are resource centers where you can go to get them. The MIT. If you search MIT courses, you would see MIT does lots of free courses that you can benefit from. There's also free courses done by Harvard University. There's also Udemy, EDX. I know I've used EDX a lot, to get just to learn something. And then when you learn, you build over time, and you keep looking for opportunities to make use of those skills. And the internet is just there for you to find these opportunities. So I think those are key areas that you can explore. And finally, I would say that search within and see what you can offer to the world. Don't limit yourself to Nigeria. Think global, because I honestly believe that we're all global citizens. I've not been in Nigeria for, I left Nigeria in November last year. I was in Nigeria for a while. Left in November last year, but I can tell you that I'm very knowledgeable with what's happening on the economy. All of the meetings that are being had. I use social media, Twitter. I follow the news, what channels Arise News almost every day. I have contact with people who keep updating me. This is a new policy. In fact, I even tweet more about these policies, and people in Nigeria would then, oh, okay, we didn't know what's the impact of this and all that. So the point I'm making is you can be anywhere in the world and you're still connected to where you want to be connected to. If it's China, if it's wherever, anywhere you have interest in. So don't limit yourself to just Nigeria alone. Think global, because I believe that we're all global citizens wherever you are in the world. And a problem is a problem. Whatever, however you can solve it. Nobody would ask you whether you are from Nigeria or whatever. If the problem needs to be solved, if you have the skills, trust me, people will call you to provide solutions. So so turn challenges into opportunities where you can. Always remember that every failure is a lesson. Failure is not the opposite of success, as some people would think. I think within that, your journey or your success journey, failure is part of it. So anytime you experience setbacks, challenges, just know that it is part of the journey. Pick yourself up, rise up, and see how you can get the best out of every challenge that you face. Finally, I know I've said finally the second time now. Network and mentorship are very important. For network, I just cannot emphasize how important it is. I see myself as someone that's privileged because I've been lucky enough to have very good network and associate with people that I feel like sometimes I'm not deserving of them. But again, I also think that because I add value to their work, and then they also value me in return. So when you are in a network or you meet someone, always think of value creation, value addition. What are the things that you can improve, you can do to improve the person's situation or the network or the group's situation? Those little things will make you stand out. And reach out to people as much as you can if you need help, and if you want them to mentor you, particularly people who you think are people who are well ahead of you in terms of career. And then take action. Act. Don't procrastinate. Just do something. Because time waits for nobody. The other part that I said I was going to come back to, especially as it relates to foreign exchange, is that whatever you do, try as much as possible to earn foreign currency in Nigeria. It's not I remember I was speaking to one investment bank and I made this point, and somebody, one of the directors said, "Oh, Wilson, you want people to be getting dollars, and so that dollars will now be scarce in Nigeria." I said, "No." I said, "It's all about value. Whatever value you add, don't think of just Nigeria alone." One of the things that a weaker currency does, the fact that $1 is 1,500 naira, that alone means that Nigeria's export becomes cheaper. And so it's a very good opportunity for people to export, whether it's goods or services. And so here I'll be talking mostly about, services. What can you do? So when you go through all of these courses that I listed, and then all of these platforms, take courses, read about them, see how you can apply them to businesses and to even daily lives. And more importantly, see how you can do remote work, whether you are in Nigeria or, wherever you are. How can you solve a problem based on the skills you've learned, from all of these platforms? Are there opportunities for you to be in Nigeria and do work elsewhere and still earn some income? Explore those opportunities, and I'm sure that if you stand out, and you're able to get the best of these courses, you will certainly see areas that you will contribute immensely, and you will earn a living from that. The other is on business export as well. If you do production, agriculture, think of exporting. Just last month, cocoa price was $5,000 per ton, was over $5,000 per ton, from 3,000 or 4,000 or thereabout. So you can imagine the opportunity for people to make huge earnings, if you have a small cocoa, outfit or farm, because I was speaking to one of my bosses just a few days ago. So he came from Nigeria to visit, and then when we were talking, he said, he has one very small cocoa farm in Ekiti that he was just keeping, and then he gave it out to someone to farm, and then all of a sudden, the amount of money they make was just ridiculous. Sometimes also he's also investing in processing plant just so he can process that. Yeah, I see that your video has turned on, so I guess that's a signal that I've talked too much, and then let me stop here, and perhaps if there are questions, that would be fine. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson. This is a lot. And I hope that we were jotting down, honestly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There are so many pointers. And truly, you are not just a person of theory. If not, you have just been hitting us with so much English. We appreciate the fact that it was just very practical. It wasn't just something that we just have stored up in our books, but you gave us very practical things to look into. So very quickly, if you have questions, please just drop it in the chat box, or you can just quickly unmute your mic and ask your question. If you have any question, I have a question, but I would like to be the last. So if you have questions, so you can just quickly unmute your mic and ask question. He spoke about treasury bills. If you have
Yes,
question on that,
ma'am.
you can ask. He spoke about. All right. So
I,
just go on.
I have a question concerning the investments, especially the treasury bills. So, is there a particular site, or how does one have access to such investment plans? So, how does one engage in such investment plans? That's my question, sir.
Yeah, there are several platforms that you can explore. There are a couple of investment banks, in Nigeria that do this. One of them, AfriInvest. I don't know if you know of AfriInvest. So it's one of the investment banks.
Yes, sir, I do.
Yeah, so you can just reach out to them. In fact, I know one of their CEOs in one of their outfits. He always posts about. Let me see. Ayodeji. He always posts about federal government saving bonds, and how you can even start with as little as, I think 5,000 or 10,000 naira or something like that. So he always posts it, when there are issues. And these are, less risk. This, I'm not talking about crypto or whatever. These are very safe investments that are instruments that are sold by the federal government. So that's one platform. So AfriInvest, there's so many others. GT, the GT Investment One, the Investment One, AfriInvest, so many, Meristem. So you can just Google and check for them. But AfriInvest, I know, because of course my friend is there, so he posts about this savings bond, and then you can just Google that and then see how you can be part of it. So again, I would say that if you start with a very low amount, you're most likely going to be discouraged, because I was there, and that's where I started, because I started with very little amount. But for me, what it did was to inculcate that habit of savings but investing. So I'm not the type that does a job, where I don't do that. So my joy is my either my bank or my investment. So I needed a form of investment that will. No, I know that I have money. I have saved the money, but I'm earning as little interest as possible. But the mentality is for you to grow that amount. I think that's what, and grow it over time, over a long time, not just for 1 year. This is a long-term plan. So if you had told me my money would have grown from where I started, from almost 300K or 200K, to, where I was able to get that to buy a property on the island. You can imagine how many years it took me and how disciplined I would have been over time. So that's so don't say, this thing is too small. When you see interest rate of 1,000, or you're wondering, what's this? So I will just go. The thing is that one thing with inflation is, if you do nothing with your money and you say, the interest rate is too small, you are losing out automatically, because you will never find that investment that will triple your money over time, except it's all these scam that we always hear about. I should add that there are things like crypto, Bitcoin, and co. I'm not dealing with all of those. I don't know much about. I know about it, but I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough to advise someone to go invest in there. The other thing also, there are people that buy foreign stocks of foreign companies like Apple, Google, and whatever. Those are quite expensive, but it's something you can also give it a shot, investing in the stock market. But you must be aware that your money can disappear as much as your money can double over time. So it's very much, it has a high risk compared to investing in treasury bills and other.
I have a question too. Good
Yeah,
morning.
good morning.
Thank you, sir, for the answer.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
welcome.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for the session so far. I've really gained a lot from it. And the parts I'll be coming in through is where we talk about all these export commodities. We have a lot of things that I believe we can export here in Nigeria, that we can export to other countries of the world. But what are the avenues? I believe there are some persons that are exporting in large quantity to other countries, and we have some little commodities that we can get into large quantities also. You might not be the one that is producing it directly, but you can get from people that are maybe retailers, and get them all together from wholesalers, and get them, put them together and export them. So if one wants to go into that, two questions. Number one, how do you get market for it outside the country? That's number one. I think that, yeah, I think that's the major something. Number one, how do you get market for it? And okay, and secondly, then Nigeria custom, all these custom duties and everything. There are a lot of anomalies going on there, and it makes it difficult for people that are just starting afresh, to be able to penetrate into that global market. You understand? It's very easy for people that have been into it for years, like the likes of Dangote's and the likes. But for people that are just coming up, how can you maneuver your way into this system and get yourself going? That's the question. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting question. And to be honest, I have a clear understanding of what you mean, and this is also because I've consulted for DFID. DFID used to be the UK's international aid organization, and there was a program that we used to host on non-oil exports, how Nigeria can grow its non-oil exports. And so all of these challenges that you made, I think I did that project from 2018 to maybe 2021 or so. So all of the challenges you made are things that exporters face, particularly those small scale exporters. And again, the area is not so organized. I know DFID then tried to organize it, and there's a WhatsApp platform that was created for non-oil exporters. And so you have people who are small to medium scale. In fact, they even had the Dangotes and the like join that platform. It's called NPEN. I can't remember the full name now, so I can just check Google. And so that platform basically has non-oil export. Yeah, so you can check NPEN. You see Network of Practicing Non-Oil Exporters of Nigeria. Let me just paste it in the chat box. I don't know how you can join them, but it's something that would be useful for you. You can find out more information about it. If you can't, then just let me know and I'll reach out to someone, because I'm not part of the WhatsApp group, but I know so many people that are part of it. So if you need further information, just let me know. So I would reach out to them and see if they can add you. I'm sure you will learn a lot from being part of a network like this, because what they do is there are times when they would want to aggregate. So because you need volumes when you want to export, they would want you to be part of it, and then you aggregate. So if you have a farm and you're producing XYZ and you can meet certain requirements, because standards is also very important, when you're talking about exports. So you need to make sure that you meet the certain standard and requirement for the product. So they do this aggregation where exporters will then come together with their product and then sell to other countries. So you can reach out to them, check their LinkedIn, follow them, ask them questions, and just let me know. In terms of market access, right? So they're usually agents, people that can broker and then help you out to find markets. Another way to do it is to look at what Nigerians in the diaspora need. I was speaking to a lady recently, and she said her goods got to places like Russia. She makes this spices, where you have all these spices for Nigerian soup, to make soup and all of that. And then her packaging is top notch. So it's very nice packaging. So, sometimes they'll grind turmeric, onion, and all of those things to add flavor to your meals. So she said what she's doing is she's targeting Nigerians that are living abroad. So when we talk about Jackpa, people are leaving Nigeria. She was thinking of it from a business point of view, that when these Nigerians go abroad, they need to eat Nigerian food. And how can I be the person that will make sure I service them that Nigerian meals? And so she does all of those packaging. You would see things like even Gary, the way they package it, you'll be like, is this our normal Gary in Nigeria? Very nice packaging. and then they sell it abroad. You apply that you want to export, um, and then you sell to put it in the shelves, and then there are so many Nigerians that will buy these things because Nigerians, we like our meals more than anything else. So yeah, so there are those opportunities if you're an exporter. There's also the NEPC, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, or Commission. Try to find out their website, what it takes for you to export. They have lots of information that you can learn from, and join them. One way also is to attend trade fairs. So there's people that go for exhibition. So the NEPC always organizes that. Sometimes they'll just go to Egypt, they'll go to UK, and then they'll take a couple of exporters from Nigeria there, just so you can survey the market, meet with other importers, and then you can understand the market needs. So try to look out for those. Follow the NEPC, all of their social media handles. Try to join this group, and let's see where it goes. Hope I've been able to help.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate it.
All right. Okay. Abigail, I'm not sure if there's any question. Okay.
Yes,
Anushem
I
Daniel,
have question. I'd like to get all the hands raised so that we can just quickly wrap up.
I can see Daniel's hand. Daniel, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're speaking. Maybe you can unmute. Um, I'm not sure if we can hear Daniel. No, we can't hear Daniel.
All right. Apart from
Someone says
Mr.
their
Daniel,
question.
does any other person have a question?
Someone says their
So
question
we can
in
just
the chat
quickly wrap
box.
up. Yes, we just have Daniel. Okay. Hello, Mr. Daniel. You can go on with your question.
Hi, Mr. Wilson. Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Of
you now.
course. That's why I wanted to know question they would like to say out before. All right. So somebody asked, what is hear me? Just hold on.
So for treasury bills, you would be then. Yeah,
Right,
so
right.
I'm not sure what the new amount is now for treasury bills. But then you can start with the FGN savings bond. Like I mentioned, that one is, about 5,000 naira, I think 5,000 naira per unit. So you can start with that. That one, I don't think it has any limit. But with 5,000 naira, it doesn't mean that it's 5,000 naira that you just have to invest. You can. I think the minimum is 5,000 naira, so you can go above that. And I don't know what the interest rates are now. I know it used to be around 12% or thereabouts, but yeah. So you can check out with the AfriInvest and just or any of those investment banks in Nigeria, and just check them out, and then see how you can, yeah, how you can take advantage of the platforms. I think we can hear from Daniel now.
Okay, sir. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for the session. It has been really enlightening. So I've picked up an interest in the foreign exchange market, trading the foreign exchange market, and I really want to know how much of a capital growth opportunity do we have in the foreign exchange market, because most times I've been opportune or I have to listen to the news, because definitely those fundamental factors affect the way the market moves and how it is run basically. There are times when a particular report is given and the whole market goes really, really wild, and there are opportunities definitely to grow as especially as a young Nigerian, and opportunities to earn in foreign currency as well. How much of an opportunity do we have, and how valid is it as an opportunity for capital growth?
Sorry, I don't understand your question. Is it are you talking about trading FX or earning FX? Which one?
Trading FX.
Yeah, trading FX. Oh, okay. So for that, right? I think it's I always emphasize on the risk involved in trading FX. It's almost like you're, dealing with stock markets, because if you are trading FX, what he means is, buying and selling of the currency, just so, when it gains, when you make money, or when it loses value, you make money. When it appreciates, you lose, and all that. Um, yeah, so I think that is, very high risk, and if you're ready to go with it, then fine. If you're, it's there are platforms that offer that, but for me, I would, express some level of cautiousness, because again, like I said, personally, I'm very conservative. I don't like going to markets where it's just here or there, so that my investment preference, of course, matters in how I make investment decisions. But again, before now, I was always, arguing that, based on the science, I knew that it was very obvious that the naira was going to keep losing its value. It was so obvious. In fact, I remember back in a couple of years ago, I was telling everyone that cared to listen, when naira was 360. In fact, what happened was, there's a guy I normally buy shirts from. I buy clothes and co from. He has a shop in Ikeja. So I remember going there and telling him, then naira was 350, or no, not even up to maybe 310 or something like that. I remember going there and telling him that, Oga, you better go and stock your shop, if possible, open new shops, buy things, and how much of savings do you have in FX? I kept emphasizing that to him. Any day I go to his shop, I was in a shop last year, and he always reminds me that you said all of these things, and now they're happening. Yeah, so there's always that opportunity for you to, when you know that maybe the currency would lose its value or something, you can position yourself as an individual, just so you don't get caught into all of that, depending on what you do. But in terms of actual trading and buying and selling of FX, yeah, there's so many platforms that do that, but that's not within my core area. So I would, um, I'm always, I hear more of negative stories than positive stories, and of course there are a few people that would make it, but then it's not something I would say, if you are just starting, you want to go and put all your money there. Otherwise, your fingers will be burnt. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I think someone said something about exporting cocoa and charcoal, and I've addressed that, with when I was answering the one of the previous questions on that. And another person also asked about the skills, and yeah, so Abigail has listed them here. Please, can you recommend what resources or groups we can join to be informed about the what's happening in Nigeria and around the world, just so we can subscribe? Um, yeah, so newsletters. So I don't know how this, I get lots of these, in fact, from almost all the investment banks, maybe because I've had one or two relations with them. Maybe I spoke at their platforms. And so they send daily, some of them would send daily updates, some of them weekly updates, monthly updates on what's happening within Nigeria. So I think for most of them, you can just go to their website and subscribe. Like the Afro Invest I mentioned, you can go. There's also the one from Coronation, FSDH. Yeah, you can just go to their website and subscribe. You can follow, there's, I know there's STEARS, Stairs Media. They used to have, you can subscribe and get access to some materials, even though they have premium, materials that would be paid for. But they have, other ones that you can access. In fact, I think I would recommend you join that platform, Stairs. Just go there. You would always see subscribe, and then you put your email, and then you get information. Which other ones? Check the news, Arise, Business Day. Um, yeah, Business Day newspaper. I think with Business Day also you can subscribe on their website. Business Day newspaper. Yeah, so many others, so many platforms that you can. For those investment banks, just type investment banks in Nigeria and then open their website on separate tabs and just look for where you can subscribe or send them an email, and then they will add you to their database. It's always good for you because sometimes they publish rates on a daily basis. They'll tell you these are the rates, if you put in maybe 1 million to 5 million, this is the interest rate you would get. If you put in 5 million to 10. So they have those information, and they have economic news. Like, for instance, when the central bank committee met, they will also give you brief on what was discussed and how that will affect the market. So you can always subscribe to some of those platforms. Yeah. Okay, someone says, let's have you let's have your contact, social media handles. Yeah, you can type that.
Can I ask a question to the first round?
Yes, please. Yeah.
All
I
right,
don't
thank you.
know what we're
My
doing
name
with
is
time.
Jerry.
So.
Yes, we'll be rounding off shortly.
Yeah,
Um,
please go ahead.
my name is Jerry,
Okay.
and I'm in real estate as well as some investment consulting. And most recently, I've been helping or trying to focus on helping Gen Zs to get it right with respect to investment. We know that the pre-Gen Zs, they are more conservative and patient in investment. Gen Zs trend, they want to get it, that is the word now. And many a times we've seen some challenges with that. How can one help Gen Zs or subsequently pre-Gen Zs get it right with respect to invest, creating sufficient wealth system? Using, for example, real estate, how can that apply?
Sorry, I missed the question. How can one get Gen Zs to the last part?
How can one get Gen Zs to build a credible wealth system using investment platforms like real estate and then the treasury bills or government bonds you mentioned earlier?
To be honest, I don't know how to answer that question because investment is patience. There's no there's no sharp way to do it. I don't know. There's no investment. Even Bill Gates and the like. So there's none that they all require patience. Investment is about making sacrifices today just so it can pay you in the next 10, 15 years. So there's no shortcut to this. It's about patience. You can't expect that. For instance, like I said, I if I started, very small with all this investment, in all these financial instruments. It wasn't for me. It wasn't like I was so keen about the interest. I saw it more as a savings platforms and a way of disciplining myself. Until is when you now grow your capital that you can then start talking about reaping the benefits. But otherwise, when you're starting, at some point you will feel like it's useless, it's needless. But you just need to inculcate that habit over time. So investment, to be honest, is patience, and there is no shortcut about it. You may be lucky. Some people, there are people that get rich overnight through investments, particularly if you invest in the stock market, right? So just recently, we've seen, especially in the late last year, we've seen how stocks of banking shares, about banking shares, share prices increased significantly. So that's one area you could be lucky, or maybe you timed it well. You have access to information, and you know these banking stocks will increase. For instance, one of the things the central bank governor said is that there will be capital recapitalization of banks, to support the president's $1 trillion economy, by 2030. That tells you that a lot of opportunities would open up in the banking sector. And so for banking stocks, banking shares in the stock market, they would most likely increase. So the best time to reposition was yesterday or even now, just so you can take advantage of that. So those are the little things. It's gaining access to information that can also help you. But overall, I think you would any investment would require time. For real estate, yeah, so I don't do real estate as an investment. So I don't really know much in terms of investment. I know the price of land would always increase. Those things they always tell us land will increase value and all that. Yes, which is good. So that's one area that people can explore. Yeah, provided that you have the relevant titles, you go through the relevant institutions to avoid issues of land grabbing and all of that. So land is always a profitable investment, especially when you know that the location would um, would be a prime location maybe in the next 10 years or thereabout. All of those would determine things like would be influenced by maybe government investment in infrastructure. Are there schools there? Are there shopping malls coming? So many roads. One road can just open up a whole community or a whole area. So those are the things that one needs to look out for. But ultimately, you still need to be patient even with the land. So tell Gen Zs and co that there is no shortcut to these things. You have to be patient.
Thank you so much, sir. We
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Wilson. I want everybody to unmute their mic as well where they can, so that they can tell Mr. Wilson, the Erumebor, how much they really appreciate him for his time, for his insights that have been shared this morning. Can we all unmute our mic and show some appreciation to Mr. Wilson, please? If you can hear me, let's do
Thank you,
that.
sir, for the session. We
Thank you
So
so
unmute your
much,
mic.
sir.
Yes,
Thank
I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wilson. God bless you, sir, for the time.
Yeah, thank you everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. I hope you've learned or gained one or two things from
All
the
right.
session. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, please. And then on behalf of the Confab, I don't know if Mr. Kuyoja is still around. On behalf of the Confab team, the team lead is also here.
Yeah,
Mr. Kuyoja
I'm
is
very
also
much,
here.
I'm very much
So
here.
great.
Thank you very much, everybody. Can you hear me?
Here,
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
sir, we
can
can
hear
All
you.
hear
right.
you. We can hear
Okay, thank
you.
you so
Okay,
much,
thank you for
I think
Wilson.
that.
Jerry's network is freezing or something. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. I
Mr. Kuyoja,
appreciate you
just
so much.
say to us, sir.
Oh yes, I'm talking.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I've listened very keenly. Some
Yes,
very
sir.
mind-blowing input you have given to us here today, and I'm very certain that we will just go and begin to look deep down into ourselves and see where. I mean, I've even started doing some soul searching myself to see where I can, plug in and make the most of the informations that you have reeled out today. I want to say thank you very much for taking out time to
inspire us today. And I know that we will all be better for it. Thank you once again. I know that whenever we call you, you'll always be there to um, um, come and give us insights as we beckon. Once again, thank you very much, every one of you that came. Abigail, let me just hand over to wrap up the session. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so much.
everyone.
Yes,
Let's
of
just
course.
ensure
Anytime you
to
call,
put into
I'm always
practice
available.
everything that we've
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah. Thank you, Abigail, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.